The poor mindset is not about a lack of money. It's about a lack of vision, a lack of responsibility, a lack of belief. A poor man with a rich mindset will rise. A rich man with a poor mindset will fall. Because your thoughts are seeds and your habits are the soil. If you plant limitation, fear, and doubt, you'll harvest poverty. But if you plant vision, discipline, and courage, you'll reap abundance. Most people wait until the circumstances change before they change their mind. But the wealthy do the opposite. They change their mind and then the circumstances follow. That's the real escape. Not from poverty itself, but from the thinking that creates it. So, if you want to live rich, start by thinking rich. Because mindset is the invisible architecture of fortune. What you'll learn today isn't new, but it might be new to you. Because real wealth doesn't come from novelty. It comes from wisdom. We'll talk about how to think, how to act, and how to discipline yourself into abundance. We're going to break down the difference between a rich lifestyle and a rich life. The habits, the beliefs, the routines that quietly build fortunes with certainty. If you're ready to stop chasing and start building, this is where the journey begins. I remember the first time I truly understood what it meant to spend less than I earned. I was younger then, working long hours, chasing every dollar, thinking that making more was the only path. But one night I came across an old book, The Richest Man in Babylon, and one line hit me like a hammer. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. Those words changed how I viewed money forever. They weren't just words about money. They were words about life, discipline, and respect for the fruit of one's labor. The wealthy understand this one thing better than almost anything else. Money is a seed. You can spend it all, you can eat it all, or you can plant a piece of it and it will multiply. The Babylonian rule was simple. Save 10% of every dollar you touch. Not when it's convenient, not when you have leftover. From the first dollar that enters your hand, claim a portion for your future. Too many people operate the other way. They spend first, save if anything is left, and then wonder why years go by with no financial progress. I learned this lesson early when I was struggling. I was making a modest income, working harder than I ever had, and yet it felt like I was constantly starting from scratch every month. My car needed repairs, the rent was due, a medical bill came, and every dollar disappeared as quickly as it came. I was living like a servant to money, not its master. But after reading that book, I made a decision. Not when I earned more, not when circumstances changed. Right then, whatever came in, 10% went to a separate account. At first, it felt like a sacrifice. At first, it felt like I was locking away money I could use right now. But after a few months, something remarkable happened. Not only was that 10% growing, but I noticed that I started managing the rest more carefully. I stopped making impulsive purchases because I knew the first claim had already been made to myself, to my future. That one decision began to shift how I thought about every dollar. Suddenly, every dollar became an employee working for me. Suddenly, I stopped seeing money as a tool for consumption and started seeing it as a tool for freedom. You see, money doesn't respect those who misuse it. It doesn't stay long with those who treat it like a guest, a visitor, a temporary thing. Money finds its way to those who respect it, who give it a purpose, and who understand its nature. The wealthy have learned this truth across countless generations. If you spend more than you earn, you will always be in the service of others. But if you spend less and save more, you position yourself to become the one being served. I've watched people of every income bracket struggle with this. A man making $25,000 a year can save 10% and one day have a future more secure than a man making $250,000 who spends every dollar that arrives. It's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep, how much you respect, and how much you direct towards building your own freedom. That 10% is a seed. It may seem small at first, but every oak tree began as an acorn. Every dollar saved, every dollar invested, every dollar treated with respect and discipline becomes a soldier working for you long after your hands have stopped working. You must command a portion of every dollar to stay with you, to work for you, to multiply for you. And when you do, when you make that decision and honor it, You will understand why this rule has lasted for thousands of years. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. Remember it, live by it, and it will build a future for you. I remember when I was younger, I thought money was the only thing that really compounded. You put $1 into an account, and if you left it long enough, it grew. But as the years passed, I came to understand a deeper truth. Time itself is the original seed. Time is the one thing no one can reclaim, no matter how wealthy or desperate you are. It doesn't matter if you are a billionaire or a man living paycheck to paycheck every morning. Both of you get the same 24 hours. The difference lies in how you use them. What the wealthy understand is that compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to habits, to disciplines, to ideas. Time can multiply every small decision you make, for better or for worse. Spend an hour each morning reading and thinking, and 10 years later you have a library of knowledge that no one can take from you. Spend an hour each evening in front of a television, and 10 years later you have a routine that no one can give back to you. The currency you spend every day is your life itself, and the returns you get from that investment are a direct result of where you've placed your attention. I learned this lesson the hard way. In my 20s, I would work long hours and then waste long nights. I worked for money, came home exhausted, and gave my best hours to distraction. I wondered why I felt stuck, why one year felt like a repeat of the last. It was a conversation with an older gentleman that shook me awake. He asked, if you gave every dollar you earned to a man down the street, would you consider that a waste? Of course I said yes. Then he smiled and asked, then why are you doing the same thing with your time? That night I began to understand that every hour had a value far beyond dollars and cents. Every hour was an investment in my future, my character, my ability to create. The habits I chose weren't just filling time, they were planting seeds. And like any seed, given enough time, they would bear fruit. The wealthy don't just save money, they save time. They respect it. They multiply its returns. That's why you must ask yourself every day, am I planting or am I consuming? Am I making choices that future version of myself will be grateful for? Or am I making choices that will leave him wishing I had acted differently? The miracle of time is that it compounds regardless of your awareness. The tragedy of time is that if you aren't aware, it compounds in ways you don't want. The best way I can put it is this. Every morning you rise, you're given a fresh seed called today. What you do with it determines what your future garden will look like. Will you waste it on meaningless distraction? Or will you plant it intentionally, knowing that one day you will walk through that garden and pick the fruit? Will you treat it like a resource more valuable than money, or like a commodity that can be thrown away? The wealthy understand that habits are nothing more than time compounded. The best investors in the world aren't those who trade for quick wins. They're those who patiently and intentionally nurture their efforts until those efforts bear returns too great to count. This applies to learning a skill, nurturing relationships, or building a business. All of it rests on a foundation of honoring time. Time is neutral, but it is never idle. It is always working for or against you. The secret is to make it work for you. Begin today. Spend 1 hour nurturing an idea, 1 hour gaining a new skill, 1 hour aligning your life with a deeper purpose. Do this every day, and a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll stand in a place where your younger self can finally whisper, "Thank you for making the right choice when it counted." I learned early in life that frugality is one of the oldest secrets to building a strong financial foundation. And yet, many confuse it with deprivation. They picture frugality as going without, as if it means living a life of scarcity, scraping by and saying no to every comfort. But that isn't frugality. Frugality is about mastery. It's about knowing where your money goes, directing it consciously, and understanding that every dollar you spend is a seed you plant in the soil of your future. I remember as a young man looking at the people around me. Some earned far more than I did, yet always felt behind. New cars every couple of years, expensive nights out every weekend, vacations that left them buried in debt. They possessed much, but their possessions possessed them. The ancient philosophers had it right when they said, wealth consists not in having many possessions, but in having few wants. The wealthy person knows that every dollar saved is a dollar that can be put to work. They understand that every dollar invested is one more soldier in the army of their future. That lesson became very real for me when I first started putting aside 10% of every paycheck. At first it felt like sacrifice, like saying no when I wanted to say yes. But quickly I discovered something remarkable. The moment I stopped focusing on the things I gave up and started focusing on the freedom I was gaining, the whole game changed. Frugality became a tool for empowerment. It was no longer about deprivation. It was about making room for a better future. The wealthy person understands that it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. You can make a fortune every year, but if you spend every dollar as quickly as it arrives, you're no closer to freedom than the person making a fraction of that. True frugality means making friends with discipline. It means looking at every dollar and asking, is this bringing me closer to the life I imagine, or is this merely a moment's comfort? Sometimes a no today can lead to 10 yeses tomorrow. I remember a moment when I was tempted to buy a brand new car. All the friends around me were upgrading. I felt the pressure, felt that sting of comparison. But when I sat down and calculated how much that car would cost over 5 years, the payments, the interest, the insurance, the depreciation, I asked myself, what if I invested this money instead? What if I put it into an index fund or a piece of real estate? What kind of seed would that be planting for 10 years down the line? The decision became obvious. I chose the seed over the symbol. And 10 years later, that seed had grown into a tree that shaded my family with its abundance. That's the heart of frugality. It's about making every dollar a choice, a conscious decision. The wealthy don't ask, can I afford this? They ask, is this worth it? Is this going to multiply for me, or will it diminish the life I'm trying to build? Frugality doesn't mean saying no forever. It means saying no long enough for the yes to matter. It's saying no until your future is strong enough, secure enough to bear the weight of your present. Mastering frugality doesn't make you a prisoner of scarcity. It makes you a commander of abundance. It's a quiet strength, a discipline rooted in knowing your worth and aligning your habits with your aspirations. Frugality is the first step out of the consumer mindset and into the realm of the creator. Spend intentionally, save diligently, invest wisely. Do this, and one day you'll realize that your money is no longer a visitor that disappears each month, but a loyal worker, growing, compounding, and multiplying long after your daily efforts have ended. Debt is one of those silent traps that can quietly undermine your financial future if you let it. I've seen many people, even those earning good incomes, struggle simply because they allowed their present desires to be paid for by their future selves. The idea of borrowing money for things that lose value, like a new car or fancy gadgets, creates a shackle, invisible but heavy, that drags down your ability to build wealth. The truth is, the future should never be burdened by the present, unless you're making a wise investment. Let me tell you a story from my own life. Early on, I learned that the easiest way to become poor is to spend money you don't have on things you don't need. I was young and, like many, tempted to live beyond my means. The credit cards and loans seemed like solutions, but they only delayed the inevitable. The pressure to repay with interest, the stress of owing money, and the loss of freedom taught me a vital lesson. Debt is a trap unless it's used strategically. The wealthy understand that borrowing is a tool, not a crutch. They borrow to invest in assets that generate income or appreciate in value, like real estate, a business, or education. Those investments pay for themselves and, over time, bring in more than what they cost. This is borrowing with a purpose. And it's the difference between being enslaved by debt and using it to accelerate growth. I often say, don't make the future pay for the present. When you borrow to buy a depreciating asset, you're effectively signing a contract to work harder in the future just to cover the cost of something that's losing value. Imagine borrowing money to buy a car, only to watch it lose thousands of dollars the moment you drive it off the lot. That's no investment, it's a liability disguised as a convenience. Avoiding this kind of debt means living within your means and being patient. It means planning purchases and saving for them, rather than giving in to instant gratification. It also means recognizing that not all borrowing is bad, it's the purpose that matters. A mortgage on a home you live in can be seen as an investment in stability and potential appreciation. A loan to start a business can be a stepping stone to creating wealth. But credit card balances, payday loans, or financing lifestyle expenses are chains that bind. The wise person always asks before borrowing, will this increase my ability to earn or will it decrease it? If the answer is the latter, then the debt is a burden, not a tool. And the more you can avoid that burden, the more freedom you build. I've met countless people who thought borrowing was the only option, only to realize years later that by changing their habits and avoiding unnecessary debt, they could breathe easier, sleep better, and focus on growing their wealth. Protecting yourself against debt is also about education and discipline. It's about knowing the difference between needs and wants, and about creating a budget that aligns with your goals. It means having an emergency fund so that unexpected expenses don't force you into high-interest borrowing. And it means cultivating patience, understanding that wealth is built slowly and deliberately, not through borrowed instant gratification. I remember coaching a man who was drowning in credit card debt. He felt hopeless, but together we laid out a plan to pay off the balances, starting with the highest interest rates, while cutting unnecessary expenses. He stopped borrowing and committed to saving a small amount each month. Within 2 years, he was debt-free and building savings. He told me, it wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Now I'm no longer working to pay interest. I'm working to build freedom. Remember, debt is a shackle. It restricts your choices, reduces your options, and steals your peace of mind. But used wisely, it can be a tool that accelerates your journey. The key is discipline, borrowing only for investments that produce income, never for things that decay. When you master this principle, you protect your future and open the door to lasting wealth. Your financial freedom depends on how well you guard your future against the mistakes of today. Guard it wisely, and the path to wealth becomes clearer every day. Leverage, when used wisely, is one of the most powerful tools at your disposal for building wealth. But it is also a double-edged sword that can either sharpen your financial future or cut it down to size. The truth is, many people misunderstand leverage. They see it as a way to amplify their spending or indulge in things they can't truly afford. This is the exact opposite of how the wealthy think about leverage. In my experience, the wealthy use leverage not to feed their desires for immediate gratification, but to multiply their capacity to generate income. They borrow not to buy luxuries, but to invest in opportunities that create value over time. This subtle but profound difference is the dividing line between those who grow their wealth and those who sink deeper into financial trouble. I recall when I first started learning about leverage. A mentor once told me, leverage is like a tool in your hand. It can build a house or break your hand depending on how you use it. That metaphor stuck with me. It's not leverage itself that's risky. It's how and why you use it. The key rule I live by is never to risk more than I can afford to lose. That doesn't mean avoiding risk altogether, because risk is inherent in every investment, but managing it carefully so that a loss won't wipe you out. This is the principle of calculated risk, not reckless gambling. For example, using borrowed money to purchase rental properties can be wise leverage if the income from those properties exceeds the cost of the loan and other expenses. The rental income pays the loan, and the property may appreciate in value. This is leverage working in your favor, making your money work harder without jeopardizing your financial stability. On the other hand, using leverage to buy a car you don't need or to finance a vacation is not leverage, it's debt. It doesn't create income or build assets. It drains your resources and adds pressure. This kind of leverage is a trap, and one that many fall into, thinking it's a shortcut to happiness or status. I've met many people who lost sight of this balance. One friend once took a large loan to invest in a business without proper research or planning. The business failed, and he was left with debt he couldn't handle. It was a harsh lesson, but it taught him the value of respecting leverage and controlling how much risk you take on. Leverage must always be accompanied by knowledge and discipline. Understand the investment thoroughly. Know your numbers. Have a clear plan for how the borrowed money will generate returns and how you will cover the payments. If you can't answer these questions confidently, it's better to wait and build your capital before taking on leverage. Another aspect to remember is emotional control. Leverage can amplify emotions, fear during downturns, greed during booms. The wealthy train themselves to remain calm, focused on the long term, and avoid making impulsive decisions based on market noise or social pressure. It's also important to diversify. Don't put all your borrowed eggs in one basket. Spread your investments so that if one venture falters, it doesn't destroy your entire portfolio. Leverage magnifies gains, but it also magnifies losses. That's why risk management through diversification is crucial. In all of this, humility plays a role. Recognize your limits. Don't be tempted by promises of quick riches or high returns with high risk. Wealth built on sound principles endures. Wealth built on reckless leverage crumbles. Leverage is a powerful accelerator, but only when handled with care and respect. When you use it to build income-generating assets, manage your risk, and stay disciplined, it becomes a friend on your journey to financial freedom. Misuse it, and it becomes a foe that drains your energy and resources. Remember, the wealthy don't fear leverage, they respect it. They know that the secret isn't to avoid risk, but to manage it wisely. So, always ask yourself, before borrowing or leveraging, is this increasing my ability to earn, or is it increasing my liabilities? The answer will guide you towards smarter decisions and a stronger financial future. Leverage wisely, and you'll find it to be one of the most valuable allies in building lasting wealth. When the storm hits, the markets tumble, the headlines scream, and uncertainty looms large, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Yet, in these moments of chaos, the true test of a wealthy mindset reveals itself. I've learned over the years that while the markets rise and fall, the steady hand, the calm mind, and the disciplined investor endure. There is a saying that resonates deeply with me. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. What this means is that often, the fear and anxiety we feel about financial uncertainty exist more in our minds than in the actual events. Our imagination magnifies risks, paints worst-case scenarios, and traps us in a loop of worry that paralyzes action. I remember early in my journey, I faced a major market downturn. I saw friends panic and sell off their investments at a loss, driven by fear. But a mentor advised me to do the opposite, to stay calm and stay invested. At first, it felt counterintuitive. How could I hold on when everything around me was collapsing? But I followed the advice and watched as the market recovered over time, turning those losses into gains. That experience became a cornerstone of my financial philosophy. The first step to practicing calm during chaos is understanding the nature of markets. Markets do not move in a straight line. They ebb and flow like the tides. What goes down will often come back up. Trying to time the market by reacting to every dip or spike is a fool's game. Instead, focus on the long-term vision. Wealth is built over years, not days or months. Discipline in sticking to your plan becomes your anchor amid volatility. The second principle is mastering your emotions. It's natural to feel fear, doubt, or anxiety, but these emotions can cloud judgment and lead to rash decisions. I often say that emotional intelligence is as important as financial intelligence. When fear strikes, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, am I reacting to facts or to feelings? What would a wise investor do right now? This moment of pause can prevent costly mistakes. Third, build a diversified portfolio tailored to your risk tolerance and goals. Diversification doesn't eliminate risk, but it spreads it across different assets, smoothing out the impact of any one investment's downturn. When chaos hits one area, others may hold steady or even thrive. This balance supports your ability to stay invested with confidence. Another important tool is to keep your financial plan visible. Write down your goals, timelines, and reasons for investing. When fear threatens to overwhelm you, revisit these notes. Remember why you started and where you want to go. This clarity provides emotional resilience. I have seen people who monitor their investments obsessively every hour, reacting to every headline or chart movement. They become prisoners of their screens, their peace disrupted. Others check in periodically, trust their plan, and avoid the noise. Over time, the latter group tends to outperform simply because they avoid emotional trading. Finally, recognize that patience and calm are active virtues, not passive ones. Staying calm doesn't mean doing nothing. It means making informed, rational decisions and being prepared to act when the opportunity arises. Sometimes market downturns offer bargains, and those who remain calm and ready can seize them. In life and investing, the storms will come. The difference between those who succeed and those who falter is often how they respond to those storms. Calmness, discipline, and a steady heart will carry you through. The market's fluctuations are temporary. Your mindset will define your lasting wealth. Stay calm, stay invested, and let time be your greatest ally. Failure is often seen as the enemy of success, but in truth, it is one of its greatest teachers. Every setback, every misstep, every mistake holds within it a lesson that, if learned well, becomes worth more than any temporary loss. I found that the wealthy don't shy away from failure. Rather, they welcome it as an essential part of their journey. They review what went wrong, understand why it happened, adjust their course, and move forward with wisdom gained. I recall a time early in my career when a business venture I poured my energy into failed spectacularly. It was a hard blow financially and emotionally. But instead of giving in to defeat, I took a step back and asked myself tough questions. What assumptions did I make that were wrong? Where did my judgment fail? What could I have done differently? This honest self-assessment was painful, but it became the foundation for my next success. It's important to remember that failure isn't a sign you lack ability or worth. Rather, it's an inevitable part of any worthwhile pursuit. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is what they do after they fail. The wealthy choose reflection over regret. They avoid the trap of denial or blame and instead take full responsibility. A practical way to learn from failure is to keep a failure journal, a place where you write down what went wrong, what you learned, and how you will apply that lesson moving forward. This practice forces clarity and prevents you from repeating the same mistakes. It also turns failure into a resource rather than a roadblock. Another key is to cultivate resilience, the ability to bounce back stronger. Resilience is built through perspective, seeing failure as temporary, specific to a situation, and manageable rather than permanent or personal. Resilient people face setbacks with courage and a belief that this too shall pass. I've met countless people who avoid risk because they fear failure, yet they end up trapped in mediocrity. The truth is, risk without risk of failure is rarely rewarded. Growth demands stepping outside your comfort zone and accepting the possibility of falling short. The wealthy know this and embrace risk intelligently, with plans that allow them to recover and learn. Failure also teaches humility. It reminds us that no matter how experienced or knowledgeable we become, life can still surprise us. This humility keeps us open to new ideas, adaptable and connected to reality. Wealth built on arrogance and denial is fragile. Wealth built on humility and learning is strong. There's a saying that success is not final and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. That courage is born of a mindset that sees failure not as a permanent mark, but as a stepping stone. Remember, every great fortune has a story of failure woven into it. So when you face setbacks, and you don't rush to despair or give up. Stop, breathe, reflect, ask, what is this trying to teach me? Then adjust your sails and keep moving forward. That is the hallmark of true financial wisdom and lasting success. When it comes to building wealth, there's a powerful advantage in seeking advice that has stood the test of time. The world rushes forward with new trends and fleeting fads, but the core principles of prosperity, discipline, and growth have remained unchanged for centuries. True wisdom is timeless, found not only in modern finance books, but in the works of philosophers, historians, and economists from long ago. These voices from the past offer lessons that still govern the way money works today. I remember when I first began studying success, I didn't start with the latest investment tips or get-rich-quick schemes. Instead, I dove into the teachings of thinkers like Aristotle, Cicero, and even Adam Smith. Their reflections on human nature, value, and exchange gave me a foundation far more stable than any quick fix. They taught me that wealth is not merely accumulation, but the intelligent use of resources, time, and effort. For example, the ancient proverb from Babylon that a part of all you earn is yours to keep remains as true today as it was thousands of years ago. This simple truth has been echoed across cultures and centuries because it's foundational. Ignoring such wisdom is like trying to build a house on sand. You might get a few floors up, but eventually the structure will collapse. One of the greatest challenges in today's world is noise, too many voices competing for your attention, often with contradictory advice. The key is to seek counsel from those who have already passed the test of time. Their teachings have been filtered through generations because they work. For instance, Benjamin Franklin's writings on thrift, patience, and industry still hold lessons for anyone looking to build lasting wealth. You'll find that these timeless lessons don't just apply to money, but to character and decision-making as well. Prosperity isn't only about increasing dollars. It's about cultivating the wisdom to handle abundance responsibly and the patience to wait for results. It's also important to realize that seeking timeless advice is an ongoing journey. It's not about memorizing facts, but about internalizing principles that shape your mindset and actions. Reading history shows patterns of human behavior, reminding you that cycles of boom and bust, risk and reward are not new. Recognizing these patterns equips you to navigate your own financial path more wisely. I encourage you to read the classics, whether it's Marcus Aurelius' Reflections on Self-Discipline, Sun Tzu's Strategies for Planning, or Adam Smith's Insights into Markets. You don't need to agree with every word, but absorb what resonates and test it in your own life. When you align your financial decisions with principles that have guided successful people across ages, you anchor your future in solid ground. Your wealth becomes more than numbers. It becomes a reflection of enduring wisdom. Remember, the newest idea isn't always the best idea. The richest minds of history have spoken, and their counsel remains a beacon for those willing to listen. Seek that timeless advice, and you'll find your journey to wealth steadier and more certain. When it comes to wealth, the difference between those who succeed and those who merely get by often comes down to the ability to maintain a long-term focus. This is not just about patience, but about the clarity to see the end from the very beginning, to envision the future you want and align every decision to that vision. The wealthy think in years, even decades, not months or weeks. They understand that building something truly valuable is a marathon, not a sprint. I remember early in my own journey, it was tempting to chase quick wins, to focus on immediate returns, or to feel discouraged when progress seemed slow. But the people I admired, the ones who built lasting wealth, had something I lacked, a mindset that transcended the urgency of the present. They made sacrifices today, knowing that their efforts were planting seeds for a harvest they might never fully see. It was their long-term vision that kept them steady through tough markets, setbacks, and distractions. One of the greatest lessons I learned was that wealth is rarely about what happens this month or this year. It's about what you build over the course of a lifetime. The discipline to save a little more, to invest consistently, to avoid impulsive decisions, all these small actions accumulate into something monumental when repeated over time. Compound interest is not just a financial concept. It's a metaphor for life's rewards when we invest in what matters over the long haul. Maintaining a long-term focus means resisting the temptation to sell out when the market dips or to abandon your plans, because results don't appear overnight. It requires a steady hand and a clear vision of where you're going. When storms come in, they always do, the long-term thinker reminds themselves that these are temporary waves, not the final destination. I recall a friend who invested steadily for years despite seeing his portfolio fluctuate. Many times he felt the urge to give up, but because he kept his eye on the horizon, he benefited from the market's eventual upswing and built a nest egg that provided security and freedom. The key was his unwavering focus on the years ahead, not the weeks behind. A long-term perspective also changes the way you think about your legacy. True wealth isn't just for yourself. It's about building a foundation that benefits your children, your community, and generations to come. This mindset turns money from a mere resource into a tool for lasting impact. When you start thinking in years, you start living differently. Your spending becomes more purposeful. Your goals become clearer. You begin to prioritize growth of skills, relationships, and assets that lasts beyond fleeting moments of satisfaction. To cultivate this focus, create a clear picture of your financial future. Write down where you want to be in 5, 10, or 20 years. Use this vision as a compass to guide your daily choices. Celebrate small victories along the way, but never lose sight of the bigger picture. Remember, wealth built with a long-term focus is not vulnerable to the ups and downs of the moment. It's built on patience, persistence, and purpose. You may not see the full fruit of your labor in your lifetime, but the legacy you build will speak for you long after you're gone. So start today, think years ahead, and build something that endures. Because when you see the end from the beginning, success becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Wealth is often thought of as something to be accumulated, guarded, and protected, but the truth is that wealth grows when it flows. There's a powerful principle as old as time itself that says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." It's not merely a poetic phrase, but a fundamental law of abundance. When you practice generosity, you're not just helping others, you're opening the doors for prosperity to come back to you in ways you never imagined. Early in my life, I struggled with the idea of giving. I thought I had to accumulate first, then perhaps share later. But as I grew and learned from those who succeeded before me, I realized that giving is not a drain on wealth, it's a vital investment. Giving shifts your mindset from scarcity to abundance. It tells your subconscious that you have enough to share, that you trust the flow of life and business to replenish what you give away. Generosity is not only about money. It can be your time, your knowledge, your kindness, or your resources. When you freely give, you build relationships and goodwill currencies often more valuable than cash. People remember the one who helped them, who shared without hesitation, and that often returns to you in the form of opportunity, trust, and connection. I recall a time when I was starting out with very little capital. Yet, I made it a point to give what I could. Sometimes it was just a few dollars. Other times it was offering help or mentoring someone else. Those acts of generosity planted seeds. They attracted mentors, clients, and unexpected opportunities. It was a reminder that generosity creates a ripple effect. What you put out comes back multiplied. Wealth that stays locked away, unused, or hoarded stagnates. Money must move, be invested, be shared, be put to work. The rich don't fear generosity because they understand the law of circulation. Money is energy, and like all energy, it must flow to grow. When you share, you demonstrate confidence and gratitude, which are magnetic qualities that attract more wealth. Practicing generosity also builds character and satisfaction. Many people who have acquired wealth report that their greatest joy comes not from the balance in their bank accounts, but from the impact they have on others. Giving aligns you with a higher purpose, transforming wealth from a mere number into a tool for meaningful living. The wise investor doesn't just think about what wealth can do for themselves, but what it can do through them. Whether it's donating to causes that matter, helping a family member get started, or supporting a community project, these acts create a legacy that lasts far beyond your lifetime. So how do you practice generosity wisely? Start small and authentic. Give with an open heart, without expectation. Let it be a natural extension of your abundance mindset. You don't have to give beyond your means. Instead, give regularly and consistently. This trains your mind to see abundance rather than scarcity. Remember, generosity is a sign of true wealth, because when you have enough to share, you've crossed from survival into freedom. Your money becomes not just a possession, but a partner in creating a better world for yourself and others. Giving is not an expense. It's an investment with returns that often defy calculation. Start giving today and watch how your wealth grows not just in your bank account, but in your life. As we come to the close of this conversation about wealth, remember this. True prosperity is not just about the numbers in your bank account, but the mindset that guides your actions every day. Wealth begins in the mind. It's the way you think about money, value, and your own potential. It's the discipline to save, the courage to invest, the patience to stay the course, and the generosity to give without hesitation. Building wealth is not a sprint. It's a journey, one small decision at a time. You don't need to start with a fortune. You only need to start. Today, make a commitment to see your money as a tool and employee working for you, multiplying quietly, steadily, and surely. Plant the seeds of discipline, learning, and generosity. These are the habits that compound faster than interest ever could. If you take one thing away from this talk, let it be this. Wealth is not a matter of luck or timing, but a matter of mindset and daily action. Change your thinking, and your actions will follow. Change your actions, and your results will change. Now is your moment. Don't wait for the perfect time or the perfect amount. Begin with what you have, where you are. Write down your goals, track your progress, and take consistent steps no matter how small. Share your commitment with someone who will hold you accountable. Be patient and persistent. Your future is in your hands. Choose to think like you're already rich. Believe in the process and act daily. Your journey to true wealth starts now.